learn about business, she got a real estate degree or construction management degree from the University of Denver. She started a little bit of political career being on the Boulder City Council, and then when Claire Levy left, a vacancy committee appointed her, and she's won re-election now 3 times. And has worked up, she was majority last year, and now this year she's Speaker of the House. Another reason she's a leader, she's one of 2 legislative bodies that have more female members than male members. So I think that's something Colorado can be proud of, and she leads that caucus, and she wanted to come and talk today about an upcoming legislative proposal to help fund K-12, higher ed, and transportation. Please give some applause to Majority or Speaker of the House.
Thanks you all for letting me come speak with you today, and thanks for these guys for accommodating me, because I reached out to them and said, I'm working on a proposal, a referred measure, and I want to get input. I want to actively seek input of the business community and local governments. So you all might be familiar that in 2005, the legislature referred Ref C, the Ref part is referred, and Ref D to the ballot. Ref C was a temporary Tabor timeout. That measure, Ref C passed, Ref D just allowed the legislature to bond for transportation projects. Folks voted against Ref D. Ref C said, Tabor, although it allows you to vote on your taxes, it does something other than that. It sets a cap. It constitutionally prohibits the state budget from growing with the economy. So our state budget is constitutionally prohibited from growing beyond population plus inflation. If it grows beyond that, we must refund that money in the form of, you might get a $10 check, you'll never even know it actually, but you wouldn't ever see that in the mail. It would just be a little decrease in your income taxes. We've done it in other ways, like we created an earned income tax credit, so we got rid of our Tabor refunds that way. In 2005, the legislature knew it was looking at a recession, and by passing Ref C, it said, we're gonna lift the Tabor cap, because the Tabor cap always resets based on population plus inflation. So if you have an inflation cap and a recession, the cap resets, and then your budget can't grow by population plus inflation again. And so it said we're going to lift that cap, and we're going to let the budget grow. If we had not passed Ref C, over $10 billion in revenue to the state would have never come to the state. We would have zeroed out higher ed a long, long, long time ago. We would have violated Amendment 23, which says you have to spend population plus inflation on K-12 every year. We would have probably closed down prisons and just released, I don't know what we would have done. $10 billion is devastating to the budget. We got rid of the ratchet down, but now Colorado's economy is growing, and people are saying, we aren't making sufficient investments in higher education, and we are not making sufficient investments in K-12. We're not making sufficient investments in transportation. So why are we continuing to do these refunds that no one even notices? So less than 5% of CU Boulder's budget comes from the state of Colorado. We are prioritizing community colleges, but if you go out to those community colleges and some of our smaller state universities, you're not going to say, wow, these are well-funded universities. Adams State, Western, Colorado Mesa, those are all struggling universities. And as you know, we're making very little investment in transportation whatsoever. Our gas tax in the state is not tied to inflation, and it hasn't increased since 1992. And that is the main form of transportation funding in Colorado. So we tried to pass 110 last year, it didn't pass. So the proposal that I'm putting forward that I want feedback on is to basically do another Ref C. We often call it a de-Brucing because Doug Bruce passed Tabor, and we have to go, he's in that law, he said, you have to go to voters to ask if you're allowed to retain the revenue that people are already sending you. So this coming year, in this budget year, we are looking at $350 million in Tabor refunds. I'm not quite sure how we're actually going to get rid of those. If we can keep that money instead by going to voters and saying, are we allowed to retain the money and spend it on state priorities instead of returning it in the form of a, I don't know, $10, $20, $30, $40 check to you all. If we can keep that, we can invest in K-12 higher ed and transportation. So I am working on legislation now to say, let's permanently de-Bruce, and this year it's $350 million. The next budget cycle, there are two different estimates that are very broad. Every year, our state economist makes a budget estimate, and then the Office of State Planning and Budget, the governor's economist, makes a budget, economic forecast. The governor's economic forecaster is saying we're going to be $700 million over the Tabor cap. The Legislative Council, the state economist, is saying, I'm predicting recession. I think we're going to be at 0 over the Tabor cap. We don't know. We know for this year, it's $350 million. We're almost certain. For the coming year, your guess is as good as ours as to whether and when a recession's going to hit. I want to go to the ballot in 2019 so we can keep that $350 million and make the investments in K-12, higher ed, and transportation specifically. If it passes, if we aren't in a recession, we can retain the money the following year, which could be 0, it could be up to $700 million, it could be we don't know what. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to be not investing in core public investments when people are already sending us this money. And it's just going to benefit our communities, our residents, our businesses, everything. So Ref C, barely passed in 2005. It was like 52%, 53%. But I think 2019 is probably a good time to go to the ballot. And I just think, I'm a Democrat, my dad's a Republican. My dad is like completely opposed to all taxes at all times. And he's like, because we should be growing our tax base when the economy grows. Well, guess what? In Colorado, we've constitutionally prohibited ourselves from doing that. It makes no sense. And I think people, when they voted on Tabor years ago, never thought that that's actually what they were voting on. People want to see investments in higher ed because it's good for our kids, our businesses, our institutions. They want to see those investments in roads. The $30, $40 check you may or may not get back depending on how we figure out how to do the Tabor refunds. You're never really going to notice that much of a difference. So that's my proposal. I'm asking for input and feedback and potentially support. I have not introduced the legislation. I ran it, I met with about, 30 lobbyists with about representing maybe 60 or 70 organizations, and then said, can I talk to the people that you represent directly and talk to them about my idea? So that's what I'm here for, and I'd love to get feedback immediately, or you can think about it and just bug these guys. Yes?
So thanks for coming, thanks for telling us about this. So the Ref CU is for 5 years, correct? And your proposal would make it a permanent de-Brucing, correct? Have you considered?
And that's one of the things I want feedback on. I mean, actually, I'm going to try and get some polling, and I want to hear from people. So if Colorado ends up in a recession and we pass this now, we'll end up below the Tabor cap, and it won't have done a damn bit of good anyway to pass it. And then we'll probably be going back to voters again. So yes, so my current proposal is to make it permanent. Yes?
And so what, for the $350 million anticipated, should it pass, how is that gonna be divided between the three?
So right now, the bill does not, one of the things that I think is a problem in our Constitution is putting formulas in the Constitution. It's just stupid. But, so I don't have any formulas in it. You know, I
So it's not
think,
earmarked specifically?
yeah, it's earmarked for those three
Three
things.
things, okay.
But how that actually, I think it has to be based on what is the most compelling case that we can make, what's the number one priority? And it might change from year to year. And that's why I think you need that, I mean, right now, I think transportation is a top need, but I also think we're so underinvesting in higher ed right now.
So how's that gonna affect though, like their budgeting, if there's not like a consistent, source of income, cause I know higher ed is completely, obviously in need of it, so let's say we bump them a little bit if this passes, but then we go back down to like the zero, worst case scenario,
Yeah.
and then they're left with like a budget shortfall.
Well, then you're left with the budget that every other state government in the country, because no one else has Tabor, has, which is, it fluctuates, right? But I think, and some people were saying, maybe you should put in the bill that this money can only be one-time money. Just one-time money. I'm not sure, again, putting that in statute and then having big fights constantly to change it, you really are left with, and actually, God, you just triggered me thinking, maybe one thing we need to add to the bill is saying, rainy day funds. Because you can then always have that, you can always treat that money as spillover. Because one thing that's also really stupid about the way we approach budgeting right now, it's almost impossible for Colorado to have rainy day funds. Because we aren't allowed to keep the money that you would normally make from rainy day funds that helps you even out in recession years. So that's just one of the, I mean, that's a great idea. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe one more question?
Yeah.
Casey, I'm Kevin Krieger, I'm on Broomfield City Council.
Yeah, hi.
How are you? I think a couple things, if you're asking about the 350 million, I'd love to see some local control on that, because I think a lot of people might think if we can make a substantial investment in something like transportation in this area, some people might say, yeah, I'll give up my $10 for that. But if all of that goes to Douglas County, then some people up here in the north are gonna be furious. They're gonna want their $10. So maybe if there was a way to allocate just that excess amount that's either gonna get sent back to people or spent by the state government, maybe a large portion of it, half of it or something, goes to some sort of local control. Counties like Broomfield, we can partner with other counties in the area to spend it on transportation or do something else. Maybe school districts would like some local control over their dollars. I think that would be more appealing to people than having it spent on something that most people are gonna feel like didn't help them at all. And I think if you're de-Brucing, and I'm sorry if I miss this, that if it gets rid of Tabor completely, then no tax increases would go to the voters anymore?
No.
A tax increase
no,
would still go to the voters?
It doesn't get rid of Tabor, okay? It does not get rid of Tabor. It gets rid of the constitutional prohibition on growth. That's what it gets rid of.
Yeah.
So it only gets rid of the cap,
Okay.
okay? So there's nothing else about Tabor that would change.
Okay, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
And
if
just,
you wanna go above
the money that goes back, it's not local to begin with. I mean, it's not, it's typically sales tax based. So Denver residents get the most because they have the most sales tax generated. So it's not, now if it's spent on transportation, how CDOT works with local governments, there's that your local control element. What we're finding with transportation is along the North Metro area, there's people ready, willing, and able to make transportation investments. It's some of the bigger highways and the rural highways where there's not the tax base. I represent Clear Creek County, which is up to the Eisenhower Tunnel. There are 5,000 people that live in Clear Creek. They're never gonna generate the revenue to make the improvements on that highway. It has to come from across the state. But I hear what you're saying, that's all helpful input. Can I take another question?
Sure.
Sure. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, did you say that fuel prices would definitely increase though, correct?
I didn't say anything about fuel prices.
Or a tax on gas?
I didn't say anything about a tax on gas. I said right now, our main, so there we get a small little money, a bit of money for transportation from registration fees. But no, our transportation is funded through the gas tax. Our gas tax is flat, it is not indexed to inflation. It is not changed since 1992, so I think it's 21 cents, Rich, or 23?
I think it's 21.
21 cents. It's been 21 cents since 1992. Obviously, 21 cents in 1992 bought you a whole lot more than it does in 2019. All I'm saying is that's left us with an issue of saying, how do we fund roads? We have not come up. We've tried to come up with ways to fund roads. We don't have that. So I'm saying you don't actually have to. Right now, I mean, I don't think it's a long-term solution. $350 million, even if we put 100% in transportation, is not going to be enough to meet our statewide transportation needs. But it's a start, and we would do this without raising taxes, right? No new tax increase with this. It's just saying the money that we already collect in sales tax and income tax, sales tax being the much bigger portion. Let us actually keep and spend on the priorities that people have in our community. You know, you've heard, I'm sure, Colorado's one of the states that funds the lowest on K-12 education. Utah, every single one of our surrounding states has passed gas taxes to fund transportation, except us, because they don't have to go to voters, they just do it at the legislature. And, you know, we're falling behind our like sister states in terms of higher ed funding. Wyoming, it's practically free to go to University of Wyoming there because they fund it all through sevens tax. We don't do that. Our tuition increases are every year they just go up and up and up. So those are the things I'm saying. We're already collecting these taxes. Let the state be able to keep them, to spend them on those three priorities. And I think we can make at least a dent in the things we need to do. So what we would do, the Prop 112, you know, all of those, people had to spend $1 million just to collect signatures to get it on the ballot and hire lawyers. If we do this through the legislature, we save about $1 million on just costs for running a campaign, and then we can run a campaign this summer to allow us to do a statewide debrucing, to spend it on the priorities that I think, you know, are universally supported. This is my analogy. Everyone in Colorado, when you say, do you think we should spend more on roads? Yes. Do you think we should cut K-12 education to do it? No. Do you think we should have a tax increase to fund roads? No. Well, so how are we going to do it? So this is my proposal. Contact me directly, contact these guys, contact your state legislator right here. And thanks for letting me take up your time today.
So the bill we will bring it before the committee. She would like our support. Just a note, this is a bipartisan idea. The last time this was tried successfully was when Bill Owens, the Republican governor, was in the office, and he supported it. So hopefully we're going to get support from both sides of the aisle, move forward.